My brothers and sisters in Christ, over the last couple of days in the first reading, we've heard the playing out of the Council of Jerusalem in the Acts of the Apostles. The first time that there's a serious question that requires the apostles to come together to pray and deliberate together and to express a judgment to the rest of the church. In this case, it's about the requirements put upon the Gentiles who are becoming Christians. And so we heard them gather together, and then yesterday we heard how they conferred. Peter, recognized as the head of the Apostolic College by the rest, speaks. The group falls silent. James is the local bishop of Jerusalem, weighs in on it. And today we hear the aftermath, which is they prepare a document, a letter, to be sent back by emissaries to the churches where the question arose, to, in a sense, explain the ruling that came out of the council. But what's interesting to me is we hear at the end of it that the message is received with joy as the letter is read to the people. Now, in one sense, we can say, of course, they like what the letter had to say. But I think it's worth our notice of the joyful spirit in which it was received. And part of the reason why was the recognition that God spoke through these emissaries. There was a recognition and entrusting to Peter and to the apostles that what came out of this was a solemn judgment, a solemn truth as if from Christ. We theologically profess the same today, but sometimes our actions and attitudes don't reflect this. We can fall prey to thinking politically the same way that we do in our secular politics and trying to bring these categories and attitudes into the life of the church. So-and-so's a liberal, so-and-so's a conservative, so-and-so's this and that. And what happens when we do this, while there's a certain measure of truth, there are people that their beliefs or structures go to different ends of the spectrum. We need to first recognize authority in the church with whom it's been invested, both for what it is and for what it isn't. And that starts with the Holy Father. A legitimate pope is the vicar for Christ on earth. Doesn't necessarily mean he's a saint. It doesn't mean he's infallible in all that he does, but it does mean that he has extended the respect of the See of Peter, and that we should always listen when the Pope speaks. Extending further to our bishops as successors of the apostles, we should owe them due reverence and obedience and listen. We recognize that popes or individual bishops may err from time to time. The times in which they act infallibly for the church are limited to a certain lane. Other times they may err. We may not like their personalities. We might not like some of their leanings. Perhaps we love some of their leanings. But what we can't do is to fall into the trap of interpreting what comes out of the apostolic leadership through a political lens first. What does this mean? And I'll hold up our two most recent popes as polarized examples. Many level the charge against Pope Francis that he's too progressive. Many held against Pope Benedict that he was too conservative or too traditional. So, and I'm in no way am pitting these popes against each other. I'm just going with the caricaturized realities. So regardless of where your own leanings are as the listener, we have these two popes. And depending on which one you liked or didn't like or this or that, you may just accept everything that comes out at face value or reject it. Read everything through a lens of suspicion. When in fact, our first step is when the Pope or our bishop speaks, is to listen with filial devotion, out of respect for the office with which they've been charged, legitimately. We should always offer due respect to that office and to what comes out from the shepherd. Now, sometimes there may be legitimate challenges to what come out. Again, individuals can err, and that always can be worked out in the life of the church. That's, in a sense, what the Council of Jerusalem and the readings is all about, the coming together of the apostles to figure it out. But we can never forget that our first response should be one of a filial respect. And this all too often is lost in today's church. If we fall into political ways of thinking, which is that we immediately trust all the words and messages of the people we like, and we immediately distrust or reject the words of the ones we think we don't like. This is not a Catholic way of thinking. It's not. Instead, we should always give pause, regardless of the leanings or our own, and listen and say, where is God speaking through this? Perhaps there's something that I'll make a counter argument on, or the church or someone else will. But do I first stop and listen to the devotion due that the apostles are speaking? We must recapture this sense of thinking that we see embodied in the recipients of the church as they receive the letter of the apostles, that they're rapt with attention, they listen, and they rejoice. Our gift, as we discussed Wednesday, our communion is our strength. There will always be disagreements, but our communion is our strength, and our communion is rooted in our apostolic succession, our bishops, our shepherds, who help us to stay in the sheepfold of Christ. And so, may we check our wayward attitudes and make sure that we first have ears to hear, a heart to receive, before we begin to speak or criticize. May God bless you all.